Superman is finally here, and I can finally say that we have gotten the Superman movie that we have been asking for, and for that, I thank you, James Gunn. So let's talk about one of my new favorite movies of the year. But as always, before we get started, if you're new here, my name is Erin, and I talk all things movies and TV, but really mostly movies, so if you're into that sort of thing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. And while you're at it, if you like my videos, hit that like button as well. And of course, if you've already seen the movie, let me know your thoughts on it down below in the comments. But without further ado, let's talk about the first movie in James Gunn's DCU, Superman. Now, obviously, there is a lot of pressure on this movie because it was essentially kicking off a brand new universe. But after seeing this movie, I can happily say and happily quote the internet in saying this, but the gun didn't jam or miss or whatever the internet is saying, because this movie made me so much more excited to see what is next in James Gunn's DC universe. But in this movie, we of course follow Clark Kent, aka Superman, as he gets involved in a foreign conflict and must also stop Lex Luthor from making things worse as he tries to navigate who he is and what his purpose is on Earth. As always, starting things off with the good, and the first thing I have here is the cast. Now, I think this cast is what makes this movie as good as it is, and after watching this movie, I just couldn't help but think how perfect the casting of each character was in this thing. Not a single actor in this felt out of place in their roles, and everyone embodied their character really well. And I'll start with the man himself, David Corenswet, and all I have to say about him is that he is Superman and Superman is him. I mean, he was born to play this role. He nailed that kind, lovable, hopeful, and Boy Scout charm that Superman has, and you could really see that in this movie in the things that he does and says. I mean, long story short, he was a complete dork, but in a good way, if that makes sense. He just embodies everything that Superman is, and there were multiple times in this movie where he would do or say something, and I would just be like, yes, that's Superman right there. And it was just so refreshing to watch a comic accurate, hopeful Superman again. Then we had Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane, and I think she did a great job. I loved what she brought to this role. She wasn't just the love interest of Superman that happened to be a reporter. She was a reporter first that happened to be the love interest of Superman in this movie. That interview scene that they had really drove this home. She was her own character with her own strengths that wasn't afraid to challenge Clark Kent / Superman in an interview, and that added a whole new dynamic to their relationship that we really haven't seen before, in my opinion. But then we have that man Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, and I kid you not, this is probably one of the best Lex Luthors we've ever seen put to screen. I think they did a great job at making this normal man feel like a threat to Superman because of his mind. I have never seen anyone hate on the levels that he hated in this movie. He is not a D1 hater, he is a Hall of Fame hater, probably the greatest of all time hater in this movie, and I can't really say anything else without spoiling it, but just know that this man gives a generational hate performance in this movie, and it is awesome and so much fun to watch. Also, he is just pure evil in this movie, and there is one scene in this thing that really drives that home, and if you've seen the movie, then you know exactly what scene I am talking about. But before I move on, I have to mention Eddie Gathegi as Mr. Terrific, because he was kind of the show stealer in this movie. He got most of the time outside of all the other superheroes. He played a huge role in just the overall story of this movie, and he was just so cool and so awesome in every scene that he was in. He also arguably has one of the best scenes in this movie, and after watching this, I need a solo project with him. Now, I could talk about this cast for the next 3 hours, but I won't, so just shout out Nathan Fillion, Isabella Merced, and really the rest of this cast, because I think this cast was the best part of the movie. Next up for the good is the action, and I thought the action was a blast to watch in this movie. We of course had our big, massive battles where we saw Superman just going all out, and that led to some pretty cool visuals, but my favorite part about some of these action scenes is that this movie not only showed Superman's care for human life, but all forms of life as well. It was just little details like that that made me love this movie and prove to me that James Gunn and just everyone involved with making this movie really understands the character of Superman and who he is. Superman was saving kids and people in this, and again, I was just like, yes, that is Superman. He is the guy who saves the cat who's stuck in the tree, helps the old lady walk across the street, or talks the kid down who is standing on the edge. And even though that exact scene didn't happen in this movie, it happened in the comic book run that this movie was heavily inspired by, and that's the type of Superman that we got in this movie. These action scenes not only showed the strength and just pure power of Superman, but it also showed the tender and caring side of him as well, which is something I very much appreciated. And the last thing I have for the good is the humor and just overall tone of this movie. Now, looking at the tone of this thing, there is a lot going on there. It's hopeful, fun, cheesy, campy, and it really shouldn't work at all, but somehow it does, and I just don't know how James Gunn does that, but I guess that's kind of his secret sauce because that's how all of his comic book movies are. This movie also had some clear parallels to what's going on in the real world, and there were a couple of lines in this thing where if you swap out the countries that are in the movie with certain names of countries that are in the real world, you would not be able to tell that that line came from a movie. And watching this movie in America, I think it's pretty clear what country that this movie is talking about, and I'll just leave it at that. But long story short, the message of this movie was just about being human and showing care and kindness to your neighbor no matter their background, which is what Superman is all about. But moving on to the humor, and it was your typical James Gunn humor that was actually pretty funny and at times got some laugh out loud moments from me. We got a lot of humor from Krypto himself and his relationship with Superman, and I can't believe I haven't mentioned Krypto yet in this review, but I just really enjoyed what they did with Krypto. He was a lot of fun to watch, especially right next to David Corenswet's Superman. Now, I do think at times they did go a little bit overboard with the humor, and I'll get to that in just a sec, but overall the humor was really enjoyable in this thing. Moving on to the so-so, and the only thing I have here is that this movie did have some pretty good emotional beats and some serious moments. My only problem with them though is that I just wish they stayed with those moments a little bit longer. This movie made some questionable cuts when it came to moving on or jumping to different scenes at times. I mean, there was a scene with Paul Kent and Clark that was a great moment in this film, but we just didn't sit with that moment and moments like that long enough to really allow those scenes to set in and allow us as an audience to feel it. A lot of times you would start to feel that scene and then it would just be over, and then you're sitting there like, oh man, that was a great scene. Could we have just stayed there just a little bit longer so I could feel the weight of that moment? I still think those emotional and serious moments worked for the most part, but there was just a little part of me that wanted a little more out of them. And finally, getting into the bad, and the only thing I have here is something I mentioned earlier in this video, but as much as I loved the humor in this movie, I do think they overdid it at times. This kind of goes along with what I was just saying about not staying in those emotional moments a little bit longer, but sometimes they would end those scenes with a big joke, and even though I thought that joke was funny, I did feel like at times it took away from the moment that we were just in. More specifically, there is a moment at the end of the film where this happens, and yes, even though I laughed at the joke, I was also like, dang, I think that scene could have been a little bit more powerful without the joke. So at the end of the day, I do think there were a couple of times where they would have been okay if they just kind of pulled back on that humor just a little bit. But for my final thoughts, this movie rocks. Everything about this thing just screams Superman. David Corenswet and the rest of the cast are phenomenal. Then you add in the action with that classic Superman score, and that gives us the Superman movie that fans have been begging for years. This is a movie that makes me more excited for what's next and is a definite must-see. Those are my thoughts on Superman. Be sure to let me know what you thought of the movie down in the comments, and as always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, get your Eazy Apparel at shopeasyapparel.com. God bless, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.